Well, hello, friends. Greetings to you today in the name of the Lord. I just hope you have a blessed day all day long and all that you do. Happy hump day to you. It's Wednesday. We're halfway to the weekend. It's all downhill from here, at least as far as counting down the days goes. Welcome to another edition of Take 5. So, this week we're dealing with the peculiar subject that we've entitled the law of consequences. We're calling it a law because that's what it is. It's a divine law that God has put in order, and we'll talk about that more this week. Probably tomorrow we'll get into that. It's a divine law that God has put into order that cannot be broken. The law of consequences orders the good and the bad that happens in our life. It just doesn't happen without the law of consequences. To every decision that we make, there is a consequence. From the greatest decision to the smallest, there's a consequence, either good or bad. Now, don't get me wrong. I know that there's a devil out there that we have to deal with. The Bible said that the thief comes to kill, steal, and destroy. I know that. I know that Peter said that the devil walks about as a roaring lion, seeking whom he may devour. I know that. I know that we're dealing with an enemy out there that wants to take us down. But not only do we have this devil to deal with, we've got the law of consequences that's put in order because every decision we make comes at a cost. It requires something, and it brings something with it. Every decision, good or bad, that we make, it's going to cost something somewhere along the way. Either good or bad, it's going to bring something into your life. And so that's why we're calling it the law of consequences. And I'll go ahead and tell you something. We'll probably talk a little more about it next week, and maybe in more detail anyway. Every bad thing that happens in your life isn't the devil. No. A lot of times I think we have found ourselves rebuking the devil for all the bad things that happen in our life. And a lot of times it's not the devil. A lot of times it's us. The decisions we made brought a consequence because you cannot override the law of consequences. Now, consequences are the catalyst that God puts in place to help us to make right choices and to help us to learn from wrong ones. If there were no consequences in this world, what would we do? If there were no consequences in this world, would we do what we have already done? Would we do it again? And so you just have to ask yourself these things. Now, when God introduced the consequences of eating of the tree of knowledge and good and evil to Adam there, when he did that, he made man a free moral agent. And so we are free to choose whatever action you want to choose, whatever decision you want to make. You are free to choose that, but you are not free from the consequences. You don't escape those. You know, consequences is one of those things that we rarely think about in life, but even the small things that we might call small, even those things come with consequences. Consider breaking civil law, if you would. There are consequences to that. There are consequences to speeding, jaywalking, running through a traffic light, breaking tax laws. There are consequences to all these things. You will have to pay the price. You choose to break the law, you'll have to pay the price. Romans 13 makes that very clear. Overeating brings a consequence with it. That brings obesity and bad health and being overweight, even shortening your life. There's a consequence to that. According to each person's body type, eating certain foods can have consequences. Allergies and diabetes and things of that nature. Smoking, drinking, alcohol, using illegal drugs, all of these things have consequences. I know people just will fight you over their right to smoke. I'm not here to fight you over your right to smoke as a believer. Man, if you want to kill yourself, be my guest. There's a consequence to doing these things. And even larger things, adultery, fornication, multiple sex partners, homosexuality, all of these things have consequences, which we have this tendency to think that if these things happen prior to salvation, then then we don't have to deal with the consequences. But I'm afraid you're wrong, because misuse sexuality is one of those sins that you have to always pay for, and you'll pay for it a long time, men and women, but men especially, because men really struggle in escaping the images of their past sexual experiences. And so there's a reason that God wanted one man and one woman. There's a reason He wanted that. And if you decide to do something outside of that, there are consequences to pay. If you marry the wrong person, because I'm one of those that still believe that God picks out the perfect person for the perfect plan He has for your life. And so you can choose to be in the perfect will of God or the permissive will of God. And either way, there are consequences that you'll have to pay. Disobedience to parents brings consequences. And parents, if your children don't know that, it's about time they learn that there's some consequences to that. Lying, speaking without thinking, being always late for work, all of these things bring consequences to them. And if we would just make right choices, we could end up on the positive side of this law of consequence instead of the negative side. When you consider this idea of consequences, you've got to analyze, where does the inspiration to make the choices that we make come from? When we make choices, good or bad, where does that come from? And it's really three places that we need to look at that our decision making should come from. Any decision that we make that's not based on reliable authority could end up in resulting in negative consequences. And this is what we're going to call reliable authority, okay? Basic law, known truth, and God's Word. That's reliable authority. Basic law, everyday law, the law that we live by. If it doesn't violate God's Word, we need to make decisions according to basic law. Known truth. That's anything that is known. That's not your truth. That's not my truth. That is what we recognize as truth. Overeating, smoking, tardiness, laziness, things like that. We know that there's a cost to those things, and we need to make decisions accordingly. And then the rest, everything falls out and hinges on God's Word. We make every decision according to God's Word, and every consequence we reap will be positive. So we need to make every decision, it needs to be based on those three things there: basic law, known truth, and God's Word. And when we make decisions according to that, the consequence will roll in our favor. Well, hey, it's been good being with you today. I got to get out of here. I look forward to being with you tomorrow on Thursday's edition of Take 5. Until then, God bless you and have a great and godly day.